Hello and welcome to the final part of 1 year in my life, the story of living in a motorhome throughout 2020, where I went. And so for the final part, what has happened now is that I have gone to Caravan Salon Düsseldorf. Now I go to Caravan Salon Düsseldorf every single year. It's one of two events which are always in my calendar, the other one being the CMT Trade Fair in Stuttgart, and it is thanks to that I can do this YouTube channel. It is where I film the majority of my videos, and what I decided to do this year was also not to make the most of my trip to Germany and visit one or two other places en route, but I'll get to that. Because of the COVID situation, the attendance at Caravan Salon was only a fraction of what it had been in the past. Every year that I have attended since 2012, the companies, the producers, have been more or less in the same position, in the same halls, and because of a huge amount of companies that were not present, for example the entire Hymer group pulled out, and I think it's fair to say that the Hymer group is the anchor tenant of the entire event, and that doesn't only include the Hymer brand, but it includes all those companies, all those brands which are part of the group, such as Laika, Carado, Sunlight, Deathlefs, Bürstner, and all the others. So none of them were there, and without them, I'd have to say it was very sad. However, other major companies such as Trigano and Carthago, for example, were present, and thanks to them there was still a lot to see. And to be quite honest, within the 10 days of the event there was more than enough for me to film, and you can still see I'm still putting up videos from then. It's now been 4 months since the show ended almost, and I've still got videos, but this I was aware of the how many I needed to actually film. With fewer exhibitors, there were also fewer visitors, and I suppose I can understand why. One thing that did happen, that this year the weather was the worst it's ever been during my visits. Normally it's really hot. Well, most days it wasn't too bad, I've got to say, but on one video I said, well, the weather matches the mood. It's overcast. Anyway, I had a fantastic time nonetheless, so I look back on that and I'm very grateful that we could actually go there, and because we can get it's a cup half empty or half full, and in this case it was definitely half full, so it was very brave of Messe Düsseldorf to allow this event to go ahead. And I've had my arguments with them in the past. In fact, I've had plenty of arguments. In fact, I was going to boycott Messe Düsseldorf from 2018 onwards, after being shouted at by a member of their staff in 2017, and anyway I decided it just wasn't worth the hassle, and just to put it behind me and continue doing my own thing. Anyway, so I did actually return. One thing about the location is that there's a campsite. This year there was a huge amount of free space in the campsite. Normally there isn't any at all. It gets full very quickly, and you have to book early. In fact, I feel if I haven't got my place booked at the beginning of July, then I start to get a little bit worried. But this year there was plenty of spare places. One interesting thing about the campsite is its location next to or close to, I should say, the Rhine River. We haven't got a Rhine view, but you can a short walk and you're on the boulevards which are next to the River Rhine. And although this is Düsseldorf as such, you're immediately out in the countryside. It's near the airport, which you can hear in many videos when I filmed there, because planes are going over non-stop. but they don't go over at night. The planes stop at 11 and start again at 6 in the morning. But one thing really quite fantastic is being able to get on a bicycle and cycle up the Rhine, and that's what I was able to do on the day at the end of after the end of the event. And this absolutely out in the countryside, and before we eventually get to Duisburg, and it's another industrial town. But one interesting place I found, I say found because I hadn't been there before, is Kaiserswerth, and it has this very interesting sort of castle that once guarded the Rhine, and an old world type street and market square. From here, from Dusseldorf, I went to Mülheim an der Ruhr. Now, for Mülheim, I have to mention two things above all. Now, I went there to film motorhomes. So, when I was at Dusseldorf, I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to film your vehicles here. I'll go to your dealership and do it there. And the dealership is Achon, and it's a new German company, or newish I should say, manufacturing in Italy, and you can see the videos related to that. But obviously I'm there, and so I take the attitude of saying, right, in the morning I'll do some filming, and in the afternoon I'm off out doing my tourist things. Now, the location of the dealership is quite some distance from the centre, but to get to the centre you have what is the greatest choice of RVs in Europe. This street, Kölnerstraße, has, I think it's 10 dealerships. Some are very large and quite magnificent to actually go down there. I did a video where I show you what is available from one to the other. The town of Mülheim is extremely interesting. So somewhat reminded me of Newcastle, where I come from, in the United Kingdom. It's post-industrial, but you've got these things which remind you of the former industrial heritage. And above all, what I'd have to, when we think of the Ruhr, we think of heavy industry. But heavy industry, there is still heavy industry. There's quite a lot of it. It's still there. But it's, first of all, I have to say it's very clean, and the second thing is when cycling along the banks of the Ruhr, it's very attractive to do. And one thing I appreciate above all was this very large waterworks, which is in the centre and offers these fantastic views of the Ruhr River. And the other thing I really appreciated as well, there's a bridge, a big metal bridge, built, I think it was 1848 or something like that. Anyways, middle of the 19th century. Clearly, it was a railway bridge, and along the former railway line, there is now a bicycle and walking track. And I went up and down there several times. I found it particularly interesting. It is the best use of a post railway line land that I've ever seen, or so far seen anyway. Obviously I haven't, but I've seen quite a lot. We come from an area where the railway lines were in general dug up and something was put in its place. From Mülheim I went to a place called Lünen. Lünen is to the north of Dortmund, and I went there to film motorhomes. I went to a place called Reisemobil Manufaktur, and of all the dealerships I visited, I'd have to say that perhaps this is even my favourite one of all of them anyway. And they really they were very welcoming to me, and maybe I took my time about filming things, but as I tend to do when I've got the time. They do Dreamer vans, the Itineo, and Florium, Fleuret, so companies within the Rapido group, and they also have a large place for doing repairs and the like. The company started off as a company which did removals, so it's got a family tradition. I think it's now in its 4th generation, and it's also located to the north of Lünen, so in the countryside, and I was able to get myself out on the very last day of summer. So I know it was the last day of summer because it was the last day I was able to wear short trousers, because whilst I was there the weather declined, and it declined, I would say, quite quickly, as you'd expect, of course, at the end of September. Now from Lünen I went to Bielefeld. I went to a place called Palmowski. It's a dealership. It is the largest dealership of motorhomes in Europe, I believe. I might be wrong on that one. Now normally they have about 300 motorhomes in stock, which to my mind is roughly around 20 million euros worth of stock. Now there's another place at Sulzemos, near Dachau, near Munich, and they have an even larger selection, but their selection is to a large extent, I think, there's more used vehicles. So whoever and it's broken down into several retailers of motorhomes. So I'm not quite so certain what the biggest would be, but in any case, to return to Bielefeld. At that moment, Palmowski, clearly they're feeling the feeling the pinch is the right way of putting it, but they can sell far more than they can acquire. So they only had 100 vehicles, only 100 in stock. So instead of having 20 million euros worth of stock, they had about 6 million euros. I've taken that as an approximation. I mean, it's not exactly necessarily correct. There's one or two really nice vehicles as well, though. And there's, for example, this one here, which is a Hymer Grand Canyon, and there's a prototype which they did with Hymer. And this thing here, although it's just a prototype, but they said it might end up costing around 200,000 euros, were it ever to be actually produced. I mean, it looks very good. I mean, whether or not in practice it's going to be what you're looking for, that's a totally different thing. Well, this company does its own brand of cheap motorhomes as well, called Exgo, and I think they're probably manufactured in Poggibonsi in Italy, and they're not quite up to the same, should we say, standard as many companies within the Hymer group. Unfortunately, the reception I got at the Palmowski dealership was not like that at Reisemobil Hartmann. I got the impression that I was most unwanted, and it was very difficult to actually do anything. Despite the fact, obviously, I'm filming their vehicles free of charge, hurdles were put in my way, such as music which kept coming up in the background, couldn't get keys to vehicles. In general, the place seemed to be too busy to put up with me. I must point out, of course, that I had invited myself, even though I had written to them beforehand and arranged it. One thing also that came to my attention whilst I was in that was speaking to other people, is that the after sales there is not particularly good, and with motorhomes this is a dreadful thing to have. It is almost certain if you buy a used motorhome, it will break down. Not break down, the engine won't break down, I hope, but something will go wrong. That's almost guaranteed. No matter who it is. So people will bring things back, and it's the quality of the after sales service is something you really want to consider. So if one dealer offers you a bigger discount than the next dealer, do consider the reason for this, because if the one with the heavy discount is could be that you're getting far worse service. And always listen to those who've already bought from one place over another, and I cannot reiterate this enough. If you find, for example, that the water system, I use that as an example, is not working, or you've got a leak somewhere, which is a dreadful thing to try and fix, but it's not uncommon, then well, that is the difference between a serious dealership and a not so serious one, and to fix those problems requires money. Most dealerships will operate on a margin of somewhere in the order of 18%, and so if somebody offers you a 15% discount, for example, on the list price, then you really want to start considering what might happen when you need service, and believe me, you will. From Palmovski in Bielefeld, I made my way to Wewelsburg. At Wewelsburg there is a castle. It's a triangular castle. It's got a long history behind it, and as you can see from various angles it looks different. Of course it's on 3 different walls, and you walk into the courtyard and there it is. It's a triangular courtyard as well. Wewelsburg is above all noted, however, not for its distant past, but its recent past. It was here that Himmler decided he was going to make a school and rest place for the higher echelons of the SS. Indeed, we have what is called an Obergruppenführersaal, which is in the North Tower. What actually went on here we don't know, but we do know there was an important meeting here of the higher echelons just before the invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, where they decided how they were going to treat the native population. And a conference like that, which took place here, is really part of a very dark history. Today we can find a very detailed museum there, which is free of charge, as well as, of course, one can visit the castle. Now, one thing which is in the castle there is a youth hostel. There was a youth hostel here before the Nazis took it over, and I'm glad to see the youth hostel went back later. Seems to me to be the sort of place, if I were still youth hosteling, that I would want to go to, because of the environment. Wewelsburg itself is a town of around 2,000 people. I found what I consider to be a rather nice Stellplatz. Okay, I was the only one there. It was on the very edge of the town, or maybe I should say village, next to the sports fields, and I stayed there a couple of nights. To me, absolutely brilliant, but there were no facilities, and I have to make that quite clear. Now, if you're interested to know more about Wewelsburg, I shall be doing probably 2 or 3 videos on this subject, and they will be published on my history channel on YouTube, which is called History on YouTube. From Wewelsburg, I went to another historic castle. This one is called Hanstein, and there I found what I have to consider one of the best free Stellplatzes I have ever been to, and what a view it offered. On one side we've got the castle, and on the around it we've got the hills and the uplands of Franconia and the Thuringian forest. This was an outpost of the DDR, if you like. The border was very, very close to here. In fact, being interested in the former inter-German border, I spent most of my time walking around it and up and down the slopes along the track that was used by the DDR border police. Now, the border installations are such, though, the wire, the fencing, the wall, it's all gone, but what you can see are the roads are still there, and they're in the condition they were probably left in 30 years ago, but you can actually walk around them. And next to this place, it was quite hard going, because it was so sheer. It was like a what, a 1 in 3 hill, maybe even steeper, 1 in 2.5, something like that. I wouldn't have liked to tried driving even a 4x4 vehicle. Certainly wouldn't have done it in my motorhome. But it would have been very tough for I would imagine the DDR border police with their vehicles on a slippery day, such as when the ice was there. The castle itself, which was built in various stages, like all castles, and we can visit it today. Also interesting in the village was the sausage museum. Well, I think it's interesting anyway, so I'm told it's interesting. I was closed when I was there, and really very nice place to go. Anyway, you can see that in the video. From there, from Hanstein, I went to a place which I've gone past many times on the motorway, seen the spires of the churches, and I thought, yeah, I have to go there one day. It's Heilbad Heiligenstadt, the holy city, and or the holy town. And it was called that because in pre-Christian days, this is where it was considered that, because somebody holy was buried there or something. But there are 2 saints, I believe, that are buried there as well. The strange thing was that it kept this name of Heiligenstadt whilst it was in East Germany. Now Heilbad, the idea of it being a spa town, now they got the spa prefix earlier in the century, but officially the town didn't even start using it until after German reunification. As a spa town, it's got spa facilities and a spa park, and it's got some very old buildings as well, which are quite curious to see. Unlike many places in Germany, it wasn't destroyed during the Second World War. It was captured by the Americans, who were handed over to the Soviets. As far as I'm aware, it wasn't, well, if it was, I think it was bombed lightly, but it wasn't destroyed. So a lot of the stuff that you can see there today is original. And one of the things which surprised me when I got there was that there seemed to be a very big Stellplatz for such a small town. But as it turned out, the Stellplatz was full. It was overflowing. There were people in the car park as well with their motorhomes. So anyway, very nice place to spend a couple of days, and I could have spent even longer there doing some walks and things, only I got kicked out because they had to do some work on the entire car park. I don't quite know what, but the kicking out time was 6 o'clock in the morning, so that was me gone. From there I headed east. I visited another company in the eastern part of Germany called Reisemobil Manufaktur, and I sort of talked to them about that for some time. I went there, filmed 2 vans, and I could have done more, but they wanted to close the place, so that was the end of that. And I also visited Bautzen, which I tend to visit on a regular basis. I really like Bautzen, and I also really like Görlitz, which was the place I went to next. Görlitz is on the border with Poland, so it's Gorzelec on the eastern border and Görlitz on the western, and it's divided by the river Nysa in Polish, and that is really, I suppose, the end of this part in Germany. I parked my van on the Polish side at the place I always go to, was Galeria Sławiańska, and then I walked back into Görlitz. Now, one thing was particularly noticeable though was the COVID situation in Poland. There had been an uptake of the disease in Poland. Everybody was wearing a mask, and which really struck me as I drove over the bridge. There are signs saying Poland, end of Germany, so to speak, but there is no customs or anything like that, of course, now. But you could see from the German side, people weren't wearing masks outside, and on the Polish side, they were. And unfortunately, it's been the COVID situation since then has just got worse and worse. I was going to go to an event in Nadazin near Warsaw, which is held every year, and I usually go to that one, but I didn't go because it was cancelled, and I think that was absolutely the right decision to do, because it was getting to a stage that nobody was actually going to be going there. So certainly was the right thing to actually cancel it. As I had 1 or 2 things to do in Poland, I thought I'd do them and then I'd head off to Sicily for the winter. That was the plan. I came to Orzechów, which is to the north of Łódź, and I filmed the Affinity campervan, which is manufactured here, and came to the factory. And then the plan was to head off slowly via Tarnów, one or two other places, and make my way down south to Sicily. However, COVID-19 got in the way, and borders were closed for tourist purposes, or it was frowned upon. And on ringing a friend of mine in Sicily, in Catania, he said that they weren't allowed to travel from one comune, sort of a local administrative area, to another. So I thought that this isn't a particularly good idea. I really don't want to sort of get in people's way or anything like that. I didn't move into a van to cause other people problems, and I shall just self-isolate by staying where I am. Indeed, I am still in Orzechów 2 months after arriving here, and I shall stay here until the situation improves and travel isn't frowned upon. So that is it. That is my year 2020. I hope that 2021 will be better. I don't have any plans now. I was really looking forward to going to Italy. I mean, normally this time of year, first week of January, I'm already thinking about going to Stuttgart to the CMT trade fair, and then to have my winter tour from there. This year there's no winter tour. I'm just going to stay where I am and make the best of it. So I hope that you found that interesting. Now, just about everything I've talked about in this series will be dealt with in individual videos in sort of more detail. And I think if I were to look on one highlight of the year, it would have to be the inclined planes that I saw on the canal, the Elbląg-Ostruda canal. That for me was I think that was the most amazing thing for me of the year that I saw. Of course, they've been there for 160 years, so they won't be going away, and so you'll be able to see them yourselves if you are interested. I am very much aware of the fact that for me it has been very easy, that I live in the motorhome, that I don't have the problems that many people have, that I can get myself out. I'm parked in the countryside somewhere all the time, and so I can get out and have walks. I very much sympathise with those of you who live in large cities, who are stuck in your house or your flat and you cannot get out at all, and the difficulties. I also sympathise with all of those who become ill, not only because of COVID, but things which I can say related to the COVID lockdown. And so it's I hope that in showing the other side, how the other half live, if you like, so to speak, that you've found this of interest. Thanks very much for watching. I will try and bring as many motorhome videos to you as I can in 2021, and of course in future years as well, as I have done for the last 3 or 4 years. All the best from Poland.